without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and invite our guest speakers up for today to give a little bit of information about themselves. I'm going to preface them as well because I've got a little introduction to read to them. But we are welcoming Brendan Davis and special guest Charles Doherty today with us. So Brendan is, like me, an American-based person who's come over to chat with you guys today. He's an American filmmaker, composer based in France, specializing in international productions that bridges cultures and storytelling traditions. He has produced projects in the US, China, France, Italy, New Zealand, Canada, and beyond. So, including the first Hollywood season of long-running Chinese TV hit Jai Pan Yu, featuring Stan Lee, Justin Lin, and M. Night Shyamalan. So, he's done some great stuff, and I'm really excited for you guys to watch his film today, which is The Unwinding. And then also we have a special guest with him, Charles Doherty, who helped Brendan with the film. He plays Chris inside the film that you guys are going to watch today. I'm really excited to sit down with him. Charles graduated WAAPA a year. There you go. Thank you, Charles. A year after Hugh Jackman. So that's a fun fact for you guys. But he's done lots within his acting career for Netflix, NBC, Peacock, Prime, kind of you name it. He's been, I feel like, all over the place. So you guys are in good company today. So let's please welcome Brendan and Charles.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Charles, I know you're quite local to the Northeast. So thank you guys so much for being part and being on our couch for today. So the way that we're going to do the Q&A is that I have some questions first around the kind of like the concept for the film, a lot more of the writing, the acting, and then we're going to go into a little bit more of the filmmaking side of it. So everybody who's more of the filmmakers in the room, we are going to get to some more technical questions, but that's kind of how I feel like structuring the Q&A will be good today. Before we get into things, if we can go ahead and give us a little bit more about your backgrounds. So if you can tell us a little bit about your filmmaking journeys as it is to date.
Sure. So in my case, I grew up in the Southeast U.S. I was a theater kid. I was also a musician. Like the two things were always parallel tracks for me. And really long story, really short, I had a band that I was the lead guitar player and writer in. We were almost famous for 5 minutes in the mid-'90s. But along the way, I went to film school in Atlanta. And I started working on the technical side. But I naturally gravitated toward being a production sound mixer and a boom operator. I later became a picture editor, an avid media composer, certified as a picture editor, and cut a ton of stuff. But I did the technical stuff for years and years, and it's good living, it's very satisfying. I learned an enormous amount because you're working on every kind of production imaginable. But I felt like it was in a rut, and I finally, in 2002, I moved to Los Angeles with the point being to force me to re-kickstart my career as a writer and director primarily. And I became a producer by default, and the short film that I did with my then longtime creative partner that I directed in 2004, released 2005, didn't set the world on fire, but it got me some notice, and I fell into producing more than writing and directing, which is why I got to 20 years later, and I continue to write a lot of things, but I finally said, damn it, I'm going to do something on my honeymoon in the UK, which my wife was actually thrilled about. And that's how I met Charles. I had a friend of mine who met the Roger King, who can be up here with us today. He's down in London, and he was my on-the-ground producer in the UK. And yeah, I know I'm kind of getting into the specifics of this film, but he was the one who knew Charles. And so what was the story with that? How did you know Roger?
I did a one-take short film for another guy. It was in London. It was the University of West London School of Communications, and It was a 15-minute one-take film that we did at Chelsea Theatre, which we filmed over 5 days. Because for a one-take film, that was like, you know, a lot. But there were like 50 people on set. It was a massive, massive production just to get this sort of like one-take thing. They had rain outside and the whole
to
thing.
like coordinate the whole.
Yeah.
the
So
timing
just
down.
to coordinate, rehearse, and it's terrific. And actually, I think you can see it on Instagram. I think I've got a link there for it. But I met Roger on that. He was the, I think, pushy first AD. He's playing the pushy first AD. And
That's good casting.
and
Love you, Roger.
it's really good casting. And we just became, you know, good mates just you know, on that. And then he called me a few weeks later and sort of said, oh yeah, you know, I'm a producer, because he's normally a production coordinator. He's a production coordinator for quite a lot of
And
stuff.
an actor, he was his cameo. My cameo was the neighbor in the hallway to motivate
him,
her
yeah.
to step in.
Lighting the
Roger's
cigarette.
cameo was the guy wearing the long shirt.
Ah, okay. Very nice.
Yeah. Anyway, he said, oh, you know, I've got this this guy making a film, and as it usually starts off, I'm sure everybody here, yeah, no, this guy is making a film. You're interested in being in it? I said, yeah, come on, all right. So, on the train down, you finish your story, and then I'll tell them about me.
Oh, well, the train down. Well, I mean, basically, part of the part that's part of what may or may not be interesting. I mean, I had originally planned to, again, massive backstory and getting right to the point. I met my wife. She was my girlfriend. We met in Beijing. I moved to Beijing from LA in 2016, and I'd been back and forth before that for a few years because I was a China Hollywood guy, and that's its own podcast series. But I met my wife, and then when COVID happened, I had a business visa, but I had to exit every 60 days. I mean, I could literally fly to Hong Kong, turn around, have breakfast, go back. But I couldn't stay. And so when what we now all know is COVID, I wasn't gonna be able to stay. So I had to go back to LA. And then we had 3 years of long distance. We reunited in Paris. Why Paris? I've been developing this movie as a producer. It's kind of a bigger movie that another friend is the writer-director on. And one of my partners from the Bay Area in the US near San Francisco. And so the last 7 years, we were shut down by COVID. Then we couldn't shoot last year because of the restrictions with the Paris Olympics and permitting and signage. Every place you pointed a camera is going to look like the Olympics. So hopefully we're going to shoot the movie spring next year. But anyway, I've been living in the world of that movie so long, planning to go to Paris for at least a year. And my wife and I reunited in Paris, had this long honeymoon. And on that trip is when we said, you know, I mean, I knew I wanted to do something, but I didn't know it was this. I had a different idea, and it was originally something that was very French, and I was going to do it in French. And one thing led to another, and I was searching for, like, where's that one note that I had that told me, like, the thing I forgot. And then I found, exactly, and I found a thing that's, like, from, like, 4 iPhones ago that carried over, thank you, Apple. Where like this one note in the folder was like this thing, and I'm like, it's beat for beat. It's not like the written script, but it's beat for beat. Just that it's that in LA with middle-aged guys instead of an older guy. It's that basically. And I'm like, this would be perfect, you know, and originally perfect for kind of working class Paris, and then when they started with La Grève, which if anyone speaks French is the strikes, it was going to complicate things to shoot there, and we were already coming to the UK. So that's how it ended up here specifically, is I'm like, okay, well, I wrote it back, I put it into English. I wrote it in English, I translated it to French, and then I rewrote the damn thing into the gang's English with some help from English friends telling me.
Wow.
Good job.
Wow, what a story, a transatlantic story from here, there, and everywhere to end up on the film that we just watched. Thank you so much, Brendan. Charles, tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your acting career and kind of, just everything surrounding kind of your acting career today.
I wasn't originally, I didn't originally set out like in the actor's journey. I was a scientist first, so my first degree was a science degree. but then I felt like I kind of ran away and joined the circus. So I was doing theatre things on the side, and then one day I decided I was going. There were two big institutions in Australia. There's NIDA and there's WAPA, and I thought, I'll give those an audition. And then I got into WAPA, and it was like, oh hell, okay, let's give that a go. And Hugh was there. He was there for I started when he was in the middle of second year, he's lovely. He's great. He's what you see on the tin. And he's a very, very good actor. I don't think you see half the things that that he does in Hollywood. He's the genuine article. He's a great.
Were you
guy.
part of any of the short films that you just kind of doing or anything during that time?
No, I think if somebody said, "Oh, what would you do if you got a chance to go back to to drama school? What would you do?" And I'd say I'd probably make better friends with Hugh, because everybody knew Hugh was going to be big. He was already doing stuff before he came. It was more the fact that I think he was already getting stuff,
Right.
and he wanted to legitimise his background. He wanted to be sort of properly trained, and so that's why he went there. He's a fantastic actor to this day. I think one of the best things I've ever seen was him doing Romeo and Juliet, which was this thing that you do in final year where you have 2 weeks to learn an entire Shakespeare play. And then to set it, and you have no set, you just wear black, and it's still one of the best things I've ever seen.
And so what did you do during your Romeo?
No, I didn't do Romeo and Juliet. No, it's like no, I
did
didn't.
Doing for that?
So he's in a different year. So his stuff is was very different to mine. And my course was also I studied musical theatre, so he was there. So weirdly, there's always this thing at WAPA is all the theatre graduates when they finish their first job is a musical, and all of the theatre grads musical theatre grads when they graduate, it's a theatre thing, and that's what happened to me. So I toured in a national tour of Peter Pan, and he did Beauty and the Beast. That was his first thing, and of course went on and did stuff. And we were actually together. We had the same agent for about 6 years. So that's kind of my journey. So I was working, and I was mainly doing musical theatre. And I was also with the Australian Opera Company for about 6 years. So my thing was live theatre.
Cavalier baritone, is that what you said?
Yeah, cavalier bass baritone, that sort of thing. Yeah. But anyway, I came over here after I'd finished the tour of the Cameron Mackintosh, the international Cameron Mackintosh tour of Oliver. And we finished in Singapore, and I thought, let's go take a few months in. I was telling you the story in the foyer. I'll take a few months here in because I was born here in the UK. I was born in London. I thought I'll come here. I'll spend a bit of time here, and I landed, and one thing led to the next. I started working, started doing shows here. I met my wife here, very sort of after about a year of being here. So I never really went back home. And that was, I did that for a while. I was doing tours here. I did Jerry Springer the Opera, Evita, Thoroughly Modern Millie. That was the first time I came up to the Northeast, was on the tour of Thoroughly Modern Millie, and followed up the next year with...
And then fell in love with it automatically, right? Right?
Yes,
We're in a room
absolutely.
full of-
I did actually. It always stuck with me. I mean, I love the Theatre Royal. The Theatre Royal is like a fantastic theatre. But I had relatives up here as well. So I have an uncle here, my mum's brother. So, but obviously, I think people from the Northeast are very Australian. Sort of like they have a good sort of self-deprecating sort of sense of humour. They say what they want to say. They have a big laugh, and they're really open to chat. So, the only thing that's different about here is the weather,
Yeah.
which is significantly different to that of Australia.
Yes, I would agree, coming from Texas as well, the weather. That's why I'm a little jealous that right now it's gorgeous weather outside. That's what we will be doing. We'll be grabbing a beer afterwards and going to sit out in the beer garden or something. But wow, thank you so much for sharing your journeys to filmmaking. Let's kind of dive a little bit deeper into the film. So you said you had the inspiration back. I loved your journey and kind of the journey that you described with your now wife. Like, how much of an influence did your relationship have within the writing of this film?
A lot. I mean, my wife is Chinese, and the original story that was 2014, long before I ever met her. Before I had been to China for some business stuff in 2013. I produced a series that you mentioned, but shot. I produced that series. I was the USEP and the producer. We shot that series, which is like inside the actor's studio for China. It's just with writers, directors, actors, producers. And did that first Hollywood season before I'd ever been to China. But I'd been working with Chinese companies. I'd been developing co-productions since about 2010 as a producer. And I had an animated feature that we sold. And I had a live action like art that was in New Zealand, China co-pro, that we had a Chinese company, come on. And I started going back and forth to China to try to get that going. Anyway, the question was, how did that relationship impact it? It's interesting because it did shape. When I wrote the first version, I mean, I was never where David is, but it was, it was autobiographical adjacent in terms of being depressed about a thing ending. And so with like present relationship with my wife is great. And so especially when I wrote this from the outline, but wrote it from scratch, we're on our extended honeymoon after 3 years of daily text to stay in touch.
Yeah.
And like Zoom dates.
Yep.
From halfway around the world.
Yep.
Is how we stayed in touch, So I definitely wanted a even more optimistic spin. The original version actually ended a bit darker. Not the darkest, but it wasn't great.
Well, there was still a psychological twist that kind of happens in the film, and I would encourage those who are watching the recording to go and watch the film. Hopefully you would have before you clicked on this video.
If so, then probably spoilers from here on.
Yeah.
Everybody in the room who saw the film, I mean, hopefully got, the ending. 98% of the people on YouTube, and then there's like 2%. I don't get it. I watch it again, put down your other screen. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, so tell us what was the inspiration for that twist then? Like, where did that kind of come? Like, was that the main kind of like hook?
It was, and it's. I mean, maybe it's going to become a gimmick of mine. Hopefully not. Dirt Track doesn't have that. So, but the film that I did 20 years ago, there's at the very end of like you've been watching this thing and you think it's suspense, like this double cross. Couple guys up to no good and one's trying to screw the other over. That's the old film. And then you learn something in the last scene. You realize, oh, they're both being played and this is who's in charge. And then the idea is like if you rewatch it, if you re-rack it right away, you're watching a different film. And so I like that idea. That was a thing that I had in my mind. So if you watch this and then you see and, realize, oh, she's a projection that he created to give himself a reason to keep on living. And, oh, my God. And then it becomes a different film. You have to rewatch it.
I felt that on the rewatch within the cinema here today before chatting to you. I felt that a little bit more. So I would encourage a second watch of it,
you
absolutely.
watch it on your phone. When you watch it on the bigger of a screen, you can see it on the better.
Absolutely. And Charles, I'll get to you here in a second, but quick fire question. Yeah. Why the 18th of March? And I asked this because my wedding anniversary is the 15th of March. So why 18th of March?
Fair question. In Chinese numerology, the number 8 is very lucky. Okay. And why the 18th? I liked the 18th. I didn't want it to be the 8th. I thought that was a little too on the nose, because people who know China lore know that. So it was just a way to not make it super obvious, but have it be a thing. Why March when we shot in April? Because 4 is an unlucky number in Chinese, and 3 is also a fortunate number. And so I picked March. But I can tell you, I don't know if it's one of your questions, but I can tell you about that whole idea of doing the feature. I do want to get to talking about that because that relates to Newcastle. If that's in your questions.
Absolutely, I do have some questions coming up about Dirt Track Honey.
About the feature of this.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, I'll hit on that here in a second. I would love to go into the casting. So obviously with Lily and David, as you talked about earlier, language is obviously a big part of this film. So what was the casting process like when it came to casting for Lily and David? Because they would have to speak Chinese inside of this. So what was that process like? And then Charles, I'd love to go to you to kind of, you highlighted a little bit about, the coming onto this project, but how did you, when getting the script as Chris, what was your kind of like character development, and how did you really jump into Chris as a character within this film?
You may take the first part real quick. And
Yeah, go for that.
Because then it sets you up. At the time that Roger was introduced, Roger King, our beloved producer, was introduced to me, my wife and I, we spent most of the UK part of our reunion tour honeymoon. We spent 2 months in France, a minute in Porto. And we spent a month and a half up in northeast Lincolnshire. So we were in Ashby-cum-Fimby, population 231. Anyone heard of it? You might have heard of Grimsby, Cleethorpes. Those are the nearest big places. But we had a blast in this little tiny place. So we were in this little cabin heated by an aga. And I'm on Zoom, and Charles, unbeknownst to me, Charles, is not that far away, relatively speaking. I didn't know him then. But Roger's putting up the casting notice on, is it Spotlight? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Roger's putting up the casting notice. Kevin, who played David, casting sort of a middle-aged older white guy there are an abundance of us, I've heard. So
I think so.
We actually had several good options, but I saw Kevin, and I hope you guys loved everybody's work in there. I'm blown away still. Catch a tear sometimes. He was great.
Kevin's an amazing actor, and and weirdly he comes from a similar background as me. So he was also music theatre and in opera. So we had a lot of opera conversations. Yeah. But I think in terms of the characters. Roger also knew Izan. They both worked together in the production company that did that short film called Take 10. Right. So she was sort of a part of that community. So advice for actors is always be part of that community, and and often you get that network that you get from having done one show, which often leads you to the opportunities you get in other shows. But Kevin's wonderful, and actually we didn't do many takes. That park scene, we didn't do many takes, and we just sort of sat down and we have a natural kind of chemistry. And my character is not too dissimilar to me. He's Australian. He's a colleague. They're both they're kind of from that.
Was he written in Australian, or did he? It was.
He was written as just Zuni's British, UK, Commonwealth. It's fine.
I asked if he wanted a different accent or whatever, and he just said, "No, that's fine. I want to do that one."
His accent. I said, your accent's perfect.
Nice.
And with this, John, I just want to say that. We had a few submissions, but her file, I'm like, oh my God, this girl is freaking amazing. And she's ethnically a mix, but she's Malaysian-born Chinese. So she does speak, she speaks, she speaks 5 languages, but she does speak Mandarin. Mm-hmm. But it's not her mother tongue. I think it's number 2 or I think number 3.
It's like Michelle Yeoh.
It's Malay plus English, and then I think Mandarin.
Wow.
And then English.
Right.
I think she speaks something else too. But.
So was it on set actually her teaching your actor David, and going through that, or did you have somebody come on
I had
to?
in the script, and then I also had my wife, who was credited as Chinese dialect coach, Susie. She actually, I wrote, I know how to say, my Chinese is not very good, but I can say all that. And so I wrote it and had her double check that I got it right. And then I had her do the recording. I had her, so I sent that to David. Ijan didn't need it, but I sent it to Kevin for him to learn the phonetics, and he did great.
Yeah, I think
he was stressing out a bit.
He was, and then we simplified it because originally the whole thing, Well, his comeback, as I speak a little, his comeback was originally like 3 or 4 sentences, and then he kind of loses it, and he said something. He says, "How about this? How about I started and that's okay. That's fine. We get the idea. That'll work, man."
Yeah, and I think it does. It kind of shows that he's not at that place currently to speak that language, and so having the sessions with her really kind of brings that back out to him, as with your character Chris saw inside of him during that park scene, which is great. I'd love to thank you so much for answering those questions. I'd love to move now into more of the filmmaking side of things, because you mentioned one scene that I had some filmmaking questions on, which is the bench scene. So for the bench scene, you break the 180-degree rule for that scene, and one, was it intentional? Probably was, because you just shook your head there saying yes. 2, what was your reasoning for that? Because I, as a viewer, upon now watching the full of it, kind of can see the reasoning for breaking that 180-degree rule on the bench. But I'd love to just hear one from you, Chris. What was that kind of like motivation that you remember Brendan giving you for that scene?
Well, I tell the wise movie the camera, but
yeah. and then for you, Brendan, like what was your reasoning for that as well?
Well, there's not a single motivation in that scene. Obviously, it's that's sort of a scenario based. He's been trying to catch up with him for a long time, so it's just really understanding what's the scenario. We need to obviously establish the rapport that you're best friends. So it had to feel very natural. It had to feel
like we were good friends. Fortunately for Kevin and I, it was very, very easy. So
so then they hit it off like just straight away. Oh, on the Zoom, actually, we all met on the Zoom.
Yeah.
It seems like they just were instantly clicking.
So there wasn't really too much other than to just make sure that we hit the beats for the different things. Sort of like establishing rapport. Obviously, whenever I try to when people get together, you have to try and have some fun. That's entertaining for other people. So obviously, some of the quips there is humor written into that.
He took a little liberty with my lines, but it was okay. But he improved it.
And and then obviously to really set the scene for what follows in terms of like, oh, you've got this person. Oh, right, okay, well, that sounds great. But also portray this, you have changed. I've been reaching out to you for so long, and now and you've been so awkward about being able to be connected around this time of year. And now you're like, there's this woman come into your life, this girl's come into your life, and she's kind of changing everything. So there's that intrigue. So it's really just about. I always look at this when you have a scene in front of you. It's not there. You may have motivations, and you may have things that you come from in terms of like the background that you need to bring in with you. But it's then just hitting the beats of each scene about what it is, the story that you need to tell. And then to try and tell it as fluidly as possible, so it doesn't feel like it's a script. It feels like it's like, oh yeah, we're just talking.
It's coming out as this character, as this person would in natural conversation, which I think is the hardest part of acting. It's not just like delivering the lines, but it's delivering with that conviction.
Well, this is not to be self-congratulatory. I've been told I write very naturalistic dialogue, and it's something that I try on. I work really hard on it. I'm proud of it. And they absolutely made it. I mean, even the stuff that was like verbatim, which was most of it, it's still, to me, it sounded natural. And that's what a great actor, and I think, not to embarrass him, I think Charles is a great freaking actor, as is Kevin. You'll see Charles, you only see a little bit of him, but I mean, he's fantastic. I've been lucky to see some of his other work, and his genre's great.
It's always a choice, though, as an actor. You're never really sure how far that you can sort of push the naturalism of the dialogue, because sometimes directors want you to be very close to the dialogue, and other times the dialogue's almost just a framework, and sometimes you have to be a little bit brave and you have to test the waters. So I was working recently, so a couple of years ago, with John Carpenter. And he's a legendary filmmaker. But I was expecting him to be sort of like very, very sort of like
Direct to the point. This is what I want
on the
as a
point.
director.
And like he had us improvising most of our scenes and most of our lines. There were whole scenes that there was a scenario. You just said, you just go for it. It's fine. Yeah, it's like
Do
that.
what you feel.
And he would often forget to call cut. So you just kept going,
Right.
unsure whether or not you could. And that's another piece of advice. It just never stopped. And then you realise, oh yeah, and then they use that in the final piece. So that was
So that was certainly a case where we could improvise a little bit. We're not sure how much, but just do it. And often that's what makes the final cut.
Yeah. And to your question, the filmmaking specific question, I'm glad you asked that. I mean, there are what we call, we like to always be open to a happy accident, right? But there are no accidents with I was freaking obsessed with every detail of this. I don't know, there's a detail that only a few people have commented on YouTube. Did anybody catch the magical reversible duvet? Like where after he's found the reason to keep on living, he wakes up and he went to bed with it being kind of dingy side up, pretty side down. He wakes up and it's flower side up. But it's
Sorry, I noticed it.
Did you think it was continuity error? That's funny. No, that was intentional. But when I started saying that, I saw her like, oh yeah, I saw it. Not to get too heavy with it, but actually, the point about. It's fun to laugh about this, and of course, but this, especially at the beginning, we had to give you a trigger warning. What informed this overall, this new version, and why I age the main character up, is one of my other business partners' mom, I'm very close to his folks, and she's struggling mightily with dementia. And I saw her a lot when I was back in the States before I reunited. So brilliant woman, accomplished, like a list of accomplishments that would choke a horse, but she's fading away. And I'm seeing the impact that's having on people. The old version was more somebody basically relatable to my then age of like 30s at the time. And it was more like, okay, it's like career frustrating. It was more kind of probably generically relatable versus specific. But so you ask about breaking the wall. We reset the line and then reset it again for the end. Very specifically, the first we were worried about. We had a slightly bigger crew than we were supposed to have for the permit.
Yes, I got an answer from the audience about what was it filming like, the location permits of that. So
Well, everything permitted as it should be, but you're only supposed to, whatever, it's like 5 people. If you have a tripod, you could only have like 5 people. We had a few more people. So there was a lot of tension of, oh crap, are the Popo going to come shut us down? Sorry, Los Angeles for police. Is Popo going to roll up on us? But so we were worried about that. So we shot the coverage of the park bench scene. We shot it standard coverage. We got the 2 shot and then like bang, bang, right? Mm-hmm. We got it just in case, the cops are coming. But then what we wanted, and what we did, we specifically broke that coverage to be over. You've noticed it, so you know where it happened.
yeah,
It happens when David's like, I've got an idea. Why don't you come over?
Yep.
And he's like, oh, okay. And then, that's to indicate the change. Like this is where things change. That's very
This is the
intentional.
shift.
And then popping back to the front is back, settling back into how we started. Bookend.
Nice.
we did have challenges on that production. I remember that night, the scene where I'm crossing the road. Yeah.
I'm not surprised that you're not still crossing the road as we sit here.
So we had these drug dealers rock up, and they were like,
Oh yeah.
and they were really pissed off that we were on their turf.
Yeah, we were on their corner.
And so we managed to just get that in. And then I can't even remember but they were like proper, pissed off. They're hanging around. We're getting the shot, and Roger's downstairs, obviously, and I don't think he wanted to deal with that sort of head on. He said, just get the shot, get the shot.
Yeah.
But anyway, they ended up racking off, because then the police car.
Yeah, the police got curious, which made those guys leave, but then the police are there, so and then we finished the shots.
Yeah. So it was an exciting finale. Maybe not the intended finale. That could have
Yeah, my nervous system just a little less, but
So I know we're running a little bit short on time. We are coming up to 3 o'clock, so I do apologize. Can I get a thumbs up from Paul? Are we okay to still go for a little while longer? Lovely. Thank you guys so much. So getting more into the filmmaker's side of question of things. So you guys mentioned before we started the screening that you shot this over 3 days. How long did the film take from writing, pre-production, production to then post, and what was the budget for the film?
it was. I mean, I started. It was a bit of prep because again, I wrote it for Paris first. Then they're having their job actions, and then we're like, we're going to the UK anyway. Let's push it down the road, and we'll do it in the UK. So it's a few months before from like going, we're going to do this, and I'd sent the script to my friend Stan, who Dirt Track Honeymoon that we'll see once we're done talking, we'll run that, and then if you want to talk to us, so we'll be out cafe and such for a bit. But basically, I've been working as a producer and writer, developing the feature of Dirt Track with this guy Stan. It's his idea, his baby. When you see it, I have a writing credit. I produced it, I directed it, and I cut it, and I scored it. But it's not all like my idea, it's me interpreting somebody else's thing. Anyway, I finished the unwinding script, and this is going to answer some of your questions. Because I was working with him to develop Dirt Track, and he was still learning how to write a screenplay. He had a screenplay that was like almost 170 pages, because the format was more like writing a novel. So in part, I sent him the unwinding short, thinking I wanted to show him. I thought it would resonate with him thematically because he's dealing with some stuff. He's an older guy. I thought it would touch him and that he would like it. And then I thought also, I'll show him how a screenplay should be written. No offense, Stan, if you see this, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm talking about. I'm right. So anyway, he loved it. I mean, he called me up crying, so moved, and like, oh my God, and like he related so much. And I think I've got the amount online so I can say it, because originally I was going to shoot it on my phone and a couple of $1,000, and that I could afford. And he said, what would it take to do this right? And after some back and forth, it's like, well, he said, could you do it for 10 grand? I said, well, I could, but it wouldn't be significantly different than doing it for 2 grand, because it's a difference of gear hire, locations, feeding people properly, So I said, I appreciate it, but if I'm going to do it, we'll save the rest. But so anyway, the 25,000 US.
Okay. 25,000, roughly about 18K, 20K.
Well, actually, I take that back. I think it cost closer to 25,000 pounds once you're done.
Okay, yeah.
Theoretically, it was, yeah.
And part of that, I would think, would be some of the camera hire. So this is a question that we had from the audience as well, was what was the camera that you shot on? Because we saw Ari come at the end of the credits. Yeah. So would love to know what you and your cinematographer name, Sarafi.
At night, this business partners, he is part of my new company as a producer, as well as shooting everything we do. The last 3 projects, the 2 I've directed, the one I produced, he's the guy who shoots them, and as a producer. He has a great relationship with Ari. Russell Allen, who runs Ari Rental for the UK, is a friend of his, and it was what's called a no-quote deal, and this is going on the internet, so I can't give it away, but it's basically, okay, you're going to have the gear for 5-6 days, including checkout and return. Here's what a day rate would look like that you pay less than a day rate. So it was a gift.
Yeah.
It was the Mini, Alexa Mini, LF.
Do you remember the lenses on it as well?
I forget the lenses.
For those that love the lenses.
I think they were Cook anamorphic. It was anamorphic, but I think they were Cooks. I'm not sure. Yeah, Naeem's gonna watch this. Give me a hard time. Sorry.
Sorry,
I
Naeem.
I know enough about lenses to be dangerous. But then I cut it. Took it all home.
Do you still cut on Avid now, or have you switched over to another program?
I cut everything on DaVinci now. I mean, I don't have Avid currently. I have Premiere. But I cut everything in DaVinci because it makes it easier to handle. I mean, I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, Premiere is great. Certain things, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna open Premiere because
It's a lovely relationship with Adobe.
that's the right tool. Wasn't
Yeah.
it? It's like, if you know any of this stuff, you learn. It's like, oh, I need to edit this photo. Well, I can do this if like on a Mac. I can do this in like Preview, or I need to open Photoshop or Lightroom. So anyway, but yeah, so I cut it. I cut it in a month, and I mean the cut, like had the final like locked picture cut in a month, and I think it took me, and I scored along the way.
Right.
And like I get bored of cutting. I get to a point where I'm waiting to like my wife to get home, play a scene, pick up whatever one of the instruments or do the keyboard thing, and then the song, the end credits is a song I wrote with my own. I wrote it, but my old band was like a hard rock soul band, and that song did not at all fit. Somebody described us as Prince meets Led Zeppelin, which was. We were attempting that. We weren't achieving that, but that was the song that I wrote. I wrote that in 3 years ago, and I retracked all that in Beijing in our house there. Yeah.
We had a celebrity colorist as well.
Oh well, yeah. Our colorist is Naeem's. Naeem's very fortunate because he is really considered a rising star as a cinematographer. If any of you read American Cinematographer magazine.
So he was.
Well, he's the ASC's master class program is like their training program. He's the guy in their ad, so he's been in the magazine for the last couple of years a lot. But our colorist is his friend who's colored the 2 films we'll see today, and also the proof of concept short for my favorite season that I produced that Naeem shot, Walter Volpato, and Walter is Chris Nolan's color. I mean, he did Interstellar, he did Dunkirk, he did Star Wars The Last Jedi for Rian Johnson, he did Megalopolis for Coppola. I mean, Walter is like, he's like
the top tier that
he's
you
like
can get
the
in the
top
top.
3 guys
Yeah.
in the world. And we're fortunate because that's who finished this, who did the final coloring master. And then
How long did it take
the next
him
one.
to grade a film like this?
It took him a day, and then he waited for me to watch it and go, "This is great. Can you tweak this? Yes, I can." The next day, it took 2 days.
Yeah, that's what I would expect of someone of his caliber to do. So just love to ask.
Yeah, no, yes, exactly. And this is like, I mean, I definitely can't say, but I mean, actually, I can say that he did The Unwinding for free, and he did Dirt Track for like, I mean, I definitely can't say.
Significant mates rate.
So no one gets the wrong idea that they can rock up. I mean, it was.
You've got that relationship. It's all part of having a community of people that you know, and that building that network.
Well, and he's.
Where you can ask favors.
Again, he's not here. He's a guy in LA, but he has. I don't know if I could say how much it's worth. I'm guessing it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Home studio that he's built specifically so he can do this kind of thing. And he has his job at the fancy post house where they pay the mortgage and all this equipment. And so he does the job at the fancy post house because he has other friends like us who he wants to help. And it's really a beautiful thing.
I feel like we can identify with that a little bit here at the Film Club with our community filmmaking kit that we have available for you guys to check out and use in your films. Lovely. A question that we got from the audience. I'll give this over to you, Chris. If you were making this film again, if you were in this film again. Sorry, Charles. To me, Charles. If you were acting this film again, what would you do differently? And Brendan, if you were making this film again, what would you do differently?
Well, we will have to do it again because
Well, why don't you take the lead on it?
Because this is going to, I mean, as I say, this forms part of the pitch process for pitching it for funding for, so the short film. And I mean, it's achieved tremendous things. I mean, just being on YouTube, it's achieved nearly 200,000.
Nearly
300,000 views.
For a long, dramatic film about a suicidal pensioner, and it's got almost 300,000 views, 98% likes. I'm blown away.
What would I do? I don't know.
Keep your beard.
I'd probably keep my beard to like hazing. I don't chin.
That beard.
Add the beard. I don't know.
I thought that the scene was just true. I don't know that I would do too much else to it. It would be different anyway if it was reworked into that sort of thing. So,
in terms of sort of like setting the plot and things like that, it would probably be less obvious, or maybe more visual storytelling, and so you would just get to live in that visual storytelling thing, which I love. I love doing, because that's the true language of film, and being able to tell things non-verbally. I don't know that I would do anything if you wanted me to try another accent. It would be a Geordie accent or something like that.
Well, you'll have to do. You might have to do a Northeast accent for the remake.
If we do it, I had to do Stu will know all about it, and Chris, because we had filmmakers up here recently just doing a short horror flick,
which was a great collaboration with Within the Frame and people from Fem 93 and at least in terms of the original meeting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
because Dylan I met on set for season 3 of Trying, which is an Apple TV series, and he's a filmmaker out of Leeds, and he was crowd third, and then he's was on set third AD for 2 seasons where sort of like came on and was doing some stuff. And we just got to know each other, and I was doing another film in Redcar, and of course he lives near there, so he said, actually, my mum is home. So we got to talking with one another, and location's a great thing actually, because when you meet Northeast filmmakers, or people who are from the Northeast down there, you instantly have a camaraderie with them, and it's absolutely fantastic. So. And I find the same with Irish people. I lived in Ireland for a couple of years. And
I do.
So whenever there's Irish people on set, it's absolutely fantastic. And so I said to him, you are planning on, because he's a filmmaker. I'm moving up to firsts now, and I'm just not getting I'm working for the man, but what I really wanted to do was make films, and so. Coming up here, but long story short, he said, well, it's in the Northeast, probably need to do sort of like maybe and he said Yorkshire, and I thought, oh no, I've got to take the bit by the horns. I've never been able to do a good Northeast accent, because
It's very hard.
It's hard because it's a class accent. So every time you listen to it, depending on where you are, so if you're in Gosforth and Ponteland, it's a different accent to if you're in Walkergate.
Or Hartlepool, or the Northeast is filled with so many different parts, so many different accents. So
the thing that helped me though is that Dylan had written a really good script, Adam and Dylan, and so all the vernacular was in the script.
Right.
Sort of like, let me tell you about did you ever hear about how your father lost a little finger? So I was able to sort of like really get into that. So yeah, if you want a Northeast accent, I'll be able to give it to you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Well, I don't know. The audience might go, Jesus, that's crap.
It's funny because the fact that you do have your accent has been a thing of curiosity with people, and so it's. I don't know.
It's very rare. I'm ever confused with that.
yeah.
Well, to answer honestly, we survived it, so I wouldn't change a thing. I'm very happy with the film that you just saw, and I hope you like it. And this is, so from the beginning, this has always been, so it's meant to be freestanding short, just like it is, but of course it ends where you're like, oh, this little guy, this could go someplace else, right? So that's also the first act of the feature. And so the feature becomes really a two-hander where it's one half, David, what's in his world, in his head, and then the other half is the Chris character and his wife, Ellen, who you meet in the feature. who it's the two of them, and how do you deal with how do you deal with someone struggling with the things that their friend is struggling with, who has no family. And it's not a total, I was telling Laura that it's not a like, oh my God, we got to chase NHS, and you know, it doesn't become the plight of how do we get this thing approved from insurance. That's understood that that's part of that, but it's really more about the emotional aspects of it. So it's about that journey. It's about the two journeys. And I had hoped to have the rewrite finished before I got here, but life intervened last couple of weeks. And also, I hadn't been here before. So I thought, you know, I'm going to ease up on myself. I got enough on my plate. And I'm going to spend a little time up here and, you know, hear some accents and see some things. And that way it's genuine. And you and I were talking on our drive yesterday to and from Liverpool. That's why I don't have a voice. No. But, well.
Too much living it up in Liverpool.
I got to compete with this guy. But we were talking about just, you know, it's one thing. He said it very well, but it was essentially, you know, it's one thing to like take something that kind of could be anywhere and you kind of localize a little. It's another thing to sort of make it feel local. So what I'm going to ask everybody, to do, besides if you have time to hang out after we've finished, you know, say hi, and I'll do my best to say hi back. But also, you know, we're both on Instagram, and that's the one social. And my new company, I'll give you the website to post maybe. But it's called Malkuth Film, MALKUTH not S, malkuthfilm.com. There's a contact form. And so if you have any questions, I know we're not wrapping up, I'm saying this before I forget. If you have any questions and you don't get me, whatever, feel free to use the contact form to say hi. But my point is, I want to get to know even more people from up here. Charles is one of my best pals. He's going to be working. He's not on the site yet because I had to butter him up on this trip to get him to say yes. He's going to be my UK rep. Okay, can I say? Yeah. Okay.
We don't need to cut this. We can cut this.
I can ask the internet to delete it. But I have a French rep, and so basically, with Charles's help, we'll start to develop it. And once I get the draft, and I'm happy with it in the abstract, he's one of the first guys who'll get it. So he can also give me, besides the overall feedback, he can also say, oh, you know, this bit we should set it at so and so's tavern, and this bit we should set it at this part. And here's why. Here's why.
And the original concept was you were going to fly to Liverpool, right? But I thought, you know,
for this trip.
Yeah,
for this trip. Yeah.
But I said, well, you know, just there's some really,
you know, there's a scene up here, and you really need to come, and you really need to meet some of these people. And I would encourage you to, you know, if you get a chance to speak to Brendan today, or to, you know, follow him on Instagram and ask questions on Instagram.
He's very like, he doesn't want to talk about like, I did all this training and stuff like that, but you know, I mean, this is what. But he is like, he's an amazing tutor. I mean, it's like New York Academy of Film.
I was a professor. I've taught like, I don't know. I had to add it up for some reason.
Say that.
I got like 15,000 hours of MFA producing and filmmaking instruction experience.
And I thought it would be really key because, you know, you understand those international marketplaces.
Yep.
You understand how, you know, the pitching process for, you know, getting into that sort of larger marketplace. And that's key. That's a differentiator. And it's worth people talking to you.
And I think it's something that we haven't even really hit on too much in this conversation today, but absolutely something that I think if we could pick your brains online more about what that process looks like.
Do a virtual event.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, come back across the pond. You know. Yeah. I'm going to leave you with one question from our audience, which is there any advice you were given early in your career that has stayed with you or proven itself particularly useful as you have progressed?
Loads and loads for me. This is going to probably sound a little bit like a fortune cookie, but if you take it to heart a little bit more, I was starting to tell, I think I told you this one earlier, one of my mentors is a producer, and Hollywood named Barry Berg, and I had him when I was teaching. I used to, among the things I did is I ran a class. It's kind of like Actor Studio, except it's called Industry Speaker Series. And if we had kind of bigger people, we would have a theater at Warner Brothers, because we were between, the school was on the Warner Brothers and the Universal lot in between. And so if we had somebody kind of bigger, we might like screen their film. He produced the movie Clueless, which is kind of a big hit in the 90s and stuff. So we like screen the film, have the talk, and opened it up to like not just the producing students, but anyway, he was just dripping gold that day, like little gold nuggets of wisdom. And somebody asked him a question that basically said, so Mr. Berg, I understand, I mean, there's so many jobs, I'm in the acting program, but I've been taking production classes. I'm interested in this. I'm kind of interested in camera. I don't know what I want to do. Now I'm confused. I thought I wanted to be an actress, and now I'm confused. And then anyway, there was more to the question, but his answer was, he said, look, there are literally thousands of jobs in the entertainment industry, but fundamentally, there are only two kinds of careers, long and short. Which kind do you want? Conduct yourself accordingly. And then he went on to a thing about acting right and being, open to people. And I mean, you get excited about things you do if they come out well. So that's where like ego can get out of check. It's like, be proud, be excited, but also be grateful and humble and all the important things that Grandma told us, hopefully. So yeah, what kind of career do you want, long or short? Act accordingly. So long is the answer in my case. Hopefully I'm following.
Hopefully much longer.
Hopefully I'm following the advice I was given.
Absolutely. And Charles, what about you? Do you have anything that's been given advice-wise to you early on when you started that you fall back on?
Yeah, I suppose everything's in the text, right? Sometimes I find that actors often go, oh, I'm going to do this, or they make decisions about things, and I walk onto it, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to try for. But I think everything's in the text, and the text can be like a blank sheet of paper, but it will show you what you should do because those beats are there, though, and understanding the text is first and foremost. But I also tend to just, ascribe to I think Tom Hanks said this. He said, sort of be professional, turn up on time, know your lines, and have an idea. Yeah. So all right, you know the text, you know what the scene's supposed to be doing, but then don't just say it as though, well, I'll just get it done. Have an idea about what makes it interesting. Have an idea about like what might be fun to do with it. And I always gravitate towards the audience experience of a script. It's like, you're still there to entertain, so try to make interesting choices. Sometimes they feel absurd, and so you just abandon them. So try everything and feel happy to abandon things, and just So I'm sort of stuck with that, and that's helped me, I think, throughout the career. It's given me a structure when sometimes I thought, but particularly when, like, for actors here, when you find yourself on a film set, or you find yourself when you're on a stage, and it's a big stage, there's 2,000 people like watching you at a Theatre Royal, or there's 150 people waiting for you to say your line. When the director cuts action, there's an enormous amount of pressure that happens at that point. So that gives you something to sort of just go, okay, ignore all of that, and have that structure support you.
Amazing. Well, can we get a big round of applause? Thank you so much, Brendan. Thank you so much, Charles, for coming and talking with us today.